Star Wars is a franchise that needs no introduction, but it's one that's definitely been on a rocky journey. Whether you're a fan who grew up with the original trilogy or someone who hopped on board with the prequels, or maybe even you're a new fan that found the property from its Disney era, it's undeniable that Star Wars has seen its shares of up and downs. To truly understand where Star Wars stands today, let's take a closer look at its history and why its current state feels oddly poetic.
But for the real family entertainment at its most sublime, you'll have to wait till after Christmas when Star Wars opens in London. Even by the standards of Hollywood, a place where nothing succeeds like excess, Star Wars is a phenomenon. It only opened in America at the end of May, but already it's the biggest box office hit in cinema history, having grossed the best part of $200 million in the United States alone. Perhaps one important reason for this immense popularity is that it somehow combines elements of all the best-loved themes of romantic adventure, from the Arabian Nights to the Western, from the Knights of the Round Table to science fiction and space fantasy.
Don't move! We surrender!
I'm Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times.
And I'm Gene Siskel of the Chicago Tribune. Our first film is Return of the Jedi, and this is my least favorite of the 3 episodes, but that doesn't make it bad. The others are just a lot better. My problem with the picture, I don't like those fuzzy little Ewoks that conclude the story. What does work, however, early on, is Luke's battle with Jabba the Hutt at the sandpit of that subterranean Venus flytrap called Starland.
And there's a vast Senate chamber where the debaters float on platforms in the middle that really arouse my sense of wonder. But maybe there could be a little more human, or maybe we should say character interest in the film. This movie has a lot of setting up to do. It begins the whole saga. It lays the groundwork for relationships which we sense are going to pay off in the next 2 movies. And so the story level isn't always as interesting as the visuals. Characters are dealing with things that are going to happen later in the series rather than dealing in the here and now sometimes.
The energy and action are back full throttle in episode 3, and I think fans are going to be elated with all the new plot twists. Now, okay, maybe you don't go to a movie like this for the dialogue, but I do think the script is too weak for this level of achievement. I want a poetry and eloquence in the dialogue that's more worthy of these characters, of their epic and of their lore, but still, this is a grand finale, returning to the true spirit of Star Wars.
Seen all the other films, but I've never felt particularly invested in them. And in the case of this, I was engaged. I thought it was exciting. I thought it was funny. I really, really enjoyed it, and I've now seen it twice. It was an element of pandering to what the fans, or what the perceived fans, wanted. Which, of course, is you're on a hiding to nothing, because in the end, firstly, it doesn't seem to have worked anyway, because everyone is as divided as they always were. And in that interview, incidentally, J.J. Abrams did say, well, we didn't try and do that, because you just thought you can't please everybody. And you can't. So my overall feeling about it is, it's very safe, it's very solid, it's very entertaining, it lacks the strength of its convictions, and most problematically for me, it doesn't pick up the baton, or it didn't pick up the challenge, the gauntlet that was thrown down.
George Lucas, the creator of Star Wars, said that it's like poetry. It rhymes. And indeed it does. In more ways than just the narrative, as George was then implying, the original movie was met with a resounding applause, yet Return of the Jedi, the final of the originals, was met with more criticisms. Don't get me wrong, it was still beloved, but people were a little harder on it than the previous 2 films. Now, the first prequel left many divided. However, the final prequel, Revenge of the Sith, was better received, and it was seen as a return to form for Star Wars. Many people loved how it branched the 2 trilogies together. Then, with the first sequel film, it was met with great reception again, and the final sequel film was again met with criticisms. As someone who appreciates all of the trilogies, it's evident that even the original trilogy did have its flaws, and they're often overlooked. Unfortunately, the sequels are just currently the end to our Star Wars film journey. I remember the excitement when I saw Han Solo and Chewbacca grace the screen again, boarding the Millennium Falcon. And after watching the film, I was thrilled. Han was back, Leia was as strong as ever, and Kylo Ren was actually a character that had a lot of potential as the villain. His lightsaber was insanely cool and unique. His helmet was actually greatly designed. And then we had the new heroes, Poe, Rey, and FN2187, or as he'd be known, Finn. They brought fresh dynamics to the saga. They were protagonists we've never really seen before, especially Finn. I was insanely excited and intrigued to see the possibility that a First Order trooper might turn into a Jedi. But here's the thing. Many fans only had two criticisms of The Force Awakens. The main one was its similarities to A New Hope. However, I remember that the prequels were being heavily criticized for being too different from the originals. So the sequels aimed to play it safe and mirrored the tone and feeling of the original films. I believe the sequels aimed to convey that evil never truly dies, and a new hero will always rise. It was showing how, similar to the real world, another empire will always replace the ones that have fallen. It was a decent approach, honestly, to kickstart a sequel trilogy, balancing nostalgia with new characters, new storylines, and really good action. Now, let's address the second complaint about The Force Awakens, and that was one of the new protagonists, Rey. A lot of people were calling her a Mary Sue, essentially stating that she was getting way too good at things way too fast, and that she was almost already good at everything. But I don't think this is warranted. Let's not forget that Luke Skywalker, the protagonist of the original trilogy, went from farming moisture in the middle of a desert to breaking into one of the most secure Imperial facilities, and then piloting and dogfighting in an X-Wing, which he had never flown before, against experienced and trained military pilots, and not only keeping up, but outperforming pilots from both sides of the fight. And that was all in the first movie. Rey's journey in comparison was relatively grounded. I mean, she piloted the Falcon, yes, but she crashed it a few times, just barely escaping a very few TIE fighters. When she barely escaped, she then ended up getting into a lightsaber duel with a wounded Kylo Ren, and Kylo was still winning the duel, and it was a 2v1 against Rey and Finn. Honestly, the only reason Rey ended up surviving is that at the time, Starkiller Base began to separate them, as the crust of the planet was literally falling apart. Now, unfortunately, then came The Last Jedi, which shook the fan base to its core. The film was insanely divisive, to say the least. It sparked petitions and even major boycotting threats. Now, I'm not going to majorly dive into The Last Jedi because, well, there are a ton of breakdowns and criticism videos already about the film everywhere on the internet. But basically, it was one of the best looking, most creative, and entertaining films in the franchise. However, unfortunately, it also misused the legacy characters, specifically Luke Skywalker, and the writing just wasn't really compelling at all. Then soon, Solo followed, and underperformed, and Disney offered a laundry list of excuses. It seemed the fans were still upset, and petitions online were asking people to boycott all Disney Star Wars films after The Last Jedi. Then, a glimmer of hope arrived. You could say it was a new hope, and it came in the form of The Mandalorian. Jon Favreau, a director who started the MCU with Iron Man, and Dave Filoni, the creator of Star Wars The Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels, delivered a thrilling space western, complete with an adorable and extremely popular Baby Yoda. They went to great lengths to keep Baby Yoda's existence a secret, even delaying merchandise production far past the airing date of their show just to make sure they avoided leaks. The show ended up being an absolute hit. It had insanely compelling writing and engaging new characters and pulse-pounding action. I mean, it breathed fresh life into Star Wars, reminding us why we fell in love with the property in the first place. Unfortunately, Disney's track record with Star Wars just continued. It showed that vast quality difference were going to be going from project to project. The Rise of Skywalker, the 9th and final film in what was now being designated the Skywalker Saga, felt rushed and pandering. They sidelined the original director, Colin Trevorrow, but his script leaked online. The Duel of Fates, as Colin had titled it, offered a glimpse of what could have been, and honestly, it was way more creative and a thoughtful conclusion than J.J. Abrams' version that we got. Soon after, Disney Plus introduced a mixed bag of Star Wars content. After Mando's second season, some shows like Andor and Tales of the Jedi delivered, and they were great, while others like Book of Boba Fett and Kenobi had their moments but fell short for shows that should have been easy home runs. Even The Mandalorian, the show that a lot of people said saved the Star Wars franchise, experienced a major dip in quality in its third season.
Able to help rebuild Plazia 15.
You were Imperial?
He was. Plazia suffered greatly under Imperial rule.
So, what lies ahead for Star Wars? Can Disney return Star Wars to glory? Was it ever really in glory? Or are we kind of looking back on it and just enjoying it as nostalgia? I think that question has no easy answer. As I had said previously, I've enjoyed all Star Wars content to an extent. And now we have 3 films in development, and I think each have potential. There's a film coming from director James Mangold, who did Logan, and Ford vs. Ferrari, and the most recent Indiana Jones. And his film is supposed to focus on the very first Jedi, which is very intriguing. Then we have a film about Rey. This is taking place after the events of Episode 9, and it's supposed to show her training Finn to become a Jedi and even rebuilding the Jedi Order, which could be done really well. And finally, there's a Mandoverse film, which is going to be an Avengers-style team-up, and as far as we know, it's the conclusion of the Mandoverse Disney Plus storylines that they've been setting up over the few years. Now, if these films maintain a consistent quality, I believe Star Wars might see another major resurgence. Now, Ahsoka is currently airing while I'm writing this, and it's been received really well, and deservingly so. The show's been incredible. There's been a few issues when it comes to overall world building and a few plot hole type scenarios, but overall it's just been fantastic. The writing's been great, and we've seen things I didn't think we'd ever get to see in Star Wars again. Now, soon there might be a change in leadership with Lucasfilm entirely. Kathleen Kennedy, who's been in charge since Disney bought Lucasfilm, has probably coming close to the end of her tenure as president. Now, whether you think this could be good or bad, and I think it would be good, we have to admit that Kathleen Kennedy is also responsible for some of these great products that we've gotten. I think her failure when it comes to president isn't choosing and picking all these bad projects or even pushing bad content. I think her failure as president is not keeping a closer eye on productions and doing what Kevin Feige did with the MCU and making dang sure that every single movie felt consistent. Kathleen Kennedy didn't do this, and it shows going project to project. Hopefully a fresh new president could really bring in a good new perspective for Star Wars content moving forward. Honestly, in the end, Star Wars fans have endured a roller coaster of love and disappointment. A thing you love might be hated by others, and you're confused as to why. This is kind of what Star Wars has always been. Like we said, George Lucas said, it's poetry. It rhymes. And unfortunately, I think this will always continue in the Star Wars saga. No. He obviously, like we said, was referring to its storytelling, but it does really apply to the fan reception of the property. There will always be ups and downs as new content comes out. Star Wars is just in an infinite loop of fan praise, then criticism, and back to praise. Currently, we're just waiting for the next resurgence of Star Wars praise, and I honestly think Disney has shown that they're getting better with the handling of the property, and I think they're slowly learning from their mistakes. Here's definitely hoping that the future of Star Wars can find a balance between the past and treating the legacy well, while still looking towards the future and giving us new and fantastic characters. Hopefully they can recapture the magic that some of these projects that they have given us and the ones before Disney have really make us remember why we are Star Wars fans in the first place and what made this galaxy far, far away so special. At this point, all we can do is sit back, hope, and may the Force guide its way.